I have heard quite a few of your episodes, and in the conversations I've seen you have with various other people as well too. One of the things that I've come to that comes to mind with me when it comes to people who are more or less in the fitness industry, where it comes to training, dieting, and the advices they give. A lot of times I see that some people more or less do the exact same thing over and over again in terms of like if a client comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want to lose weight," pretty standard stuff. What's the best thing to eat to help me lose the weight? The reason I'm starting off with that one here is because I'm wondering if at any point if you I'm not gonna say get tired of it, but maybe if you it might get redundant and what you must do to try to keep it interesting for yourself and therefore not share more or less that the eye roll, if you will, about this. I had a customer, a client asked me that the other day, gave me the exact same answers, and they gave me the exact same response. And I have another client ask me the exact same thing. I give them the exact same answer, and I'm getting the exact same response. Because the one thing that I noticed that when it comes to the fitness industry is that you take care of yourself, there's ways you can develop the skills as far as dieting, training, and everything else is concerned. But when you start talking to a client, it's not necessarily the same thing that you can translate for yourself onto other people, which I think is more of the more challenging side of it, but it's more of the repetitive that I'm wondering how you guys have learned to overcome that, because it's when I hear trainers give the answers about how they go about that, honestly, it's kind of generic in a lot of ways. So the reason I wanted to talk to you is because the way you respond to more or less a generic questions is straight to the point and a lot more cutthroat, if you will, to for lack of a better term. So I'm hoping that you can answer that portion of it, of what you go about in handling that when it comes to the repetitive that becomes with the clients asking more or less the same thing over and over and over again to prepare for a better life, if you will.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So how do I approach getting the same question repeatedly without burning out or, giving like the obviously snarky answer? I mean, I guess one of the answers is like, I don't. Sometimes I just say stupid stuff. So like, if you had just left it at like, hey, what should I eat to lose weight? I've been like celery, like depending on what mood I was in. Maybe I'd say tacos, but like, I try to have fun with it, and like, I realize that everybody's a little bit different. Everyone's in a different place in life. So generally what I'll do is try to, when I'm actually getting serious with people, is ask them a question, throw it back to them. Like, well, what foods do you like to eat? What do your kids like to eat? What's like,
Right.
how do we make this appropriate for your life? And then I'm keeping in mind, like, even though I feel like I might be really advanced with my fitness, like there are some things that I suck at, right? There are some things in like my business that are just not that great, that I need to go ask someone else who's got their doctorate in business or social media. And I go hit them up and go, hey, how do I grow my social media following? And they're going to be like, roll their eyes at me because that's the same question they get over and over and over again. So just realizing that people are all in different spaces,
Right.
that we have different skill sets and we've been there so like rather than being upset or whatever about it, by being kind of coming alongside them as a guide and being like, hey, here's how we solve this together. Here's how we figured out for your life. So a little bit of, I'd say maybe humor, a little bit of empathy, and then I love talking about this shit too. So I'll talk about fitness with you all day long. So that's a big positive for me.
Okay. So have you ever come to a point with, and I'm not asking you to give me specifics, but I'm hoping you can kind of give me like a broad overview about it, where if you work with a client here and let's say, their intention obviously is to lose the weight. They want to get in better shape. But I'm wondering if you ever come to a point where whenever you start training somebody and you start seeing the progress being made, but then there's various factors that may come into as far as them having to stop, whether it be that I have to go to work or, I'm having to leave for a lengthy period of time, or you can start to see they're losing the motivation or they're getting bored. So when it comes to those setbacks in those various things here, when do you ever think about, I mean, do you see that coming? Because I'm assuming that because you've done this for a while, you can kind of pick up the traits about, okay, this guy I can see giving up like that, or another one I can see that, okay, he's very busy, so I can see that eventually he's going to stop coming here. So I'm curious about
the week.
Right. So I'm wondering if you have like a spectrum of like, okay, so if I go and work with this person here, then I know 9 times out of 10, because I've seen this before, they're going to stop by this point. So I'm curious about if the investment level that you have with one client over another client, if it's consistent, or is it just kind of like a case by case scenario, knowing that the outcome may more or less be the same?
Well, I think that like you can never care more than your clients can, right? If they care about 50% and I care 100%, I'm going to come across as needy. I'm going to come across as a nag. They're going to start ghosting me, right? Like, and this has happened before. I'm speaking from experience. So I can only care 99% to their 100%. So if they care 50%, I can care 49%. So I can't care more than them ever, because that never works out. And people have different levels of like intensity around these sorts of things. You know, a lot of people are really busy. A lot of people have busy travel schedules, that sort of thing. Some people are like, yo, give me 6 hours a day of training. And I'm like, all right, let's rein it in a little bit. But I can predict basically when someone's going to encounter a roadblock or a snare. And some people are going to fall off and let that derail them. So one of my jobs is to pre-frame their experience with me to help them understand, like, hey, new year, new you, but also like in March, you got to cruise. So you're going to have a hard time. And when you come back from that cruise, you're going to have less motivation. You're going to feel really bad about yourself. So we need to prepare ahead of time for that. You're going to be really busy leading up to it. And so here's how we're going to deal with those sorts of things. So if I can take my experience with seeing some of these things and preempt their roadblocks that they come up to, that's part of my job. That's what I like. That's one of the things that makes me actually good at this. You know, anybody can write a meal plan and a workout. You know, you don't have to be a genius to do that. But having seen this over and over and over again, I can tell people, hey, like, you know, even with all things considered, people hit snares about week 6 mentally. They start, because here's what I hear. So I think about it is like in month 1, the first 4 weeks, we get the newbie gains, right? So I've had people, like, no lie, Rob, I had someone drop 55 pounds in a month once. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then it slowed down. So some people will drop, like, you know, most of the time, someone coming in, never having done like the program before, will drop 10 or 11, 12 pounds in a month.
Yeah. Feels
really good. They start feeling great. They start getting momentum. They start getting some great results. And then month 2, it slows down. So now maybe they drop 4, 5, 6, 7 pounds in a month. And all of a sudden it's like, well, is it even working? Is it like something's going on? And we start beating themselves up over this. So if I can give them kind of the pre-frame, allow them to understand, hey, it is going to slow down. It's fast at first, then it evens out. And that's normal. That's where you're supposed to be. That's what's going to keep those people around longer. And then finally, I can tell you right off the bat if someone's going to get results or not. I have ESPN, so I can tell. But because here's the secret. I have a video in my program called How to Fail at $1 Million Body. And it's a really popular video. Everyone hates it, actually. But if you go into my program, and I can see your progress, I can see the videos you've watched, I can see the homework you've done, I can see the things you've written out. And if in 2 weeks you have not engaged with the program or watched at least through the first intro series, you're not going to get results with me, period. You're not. And you're going to quit after 3 months after being like, well, I'm just wasting my money. It's not going to work out, because people give up on themselves because they realize that, because they have no self-confidence. This is the super shitty thing about fitness, is that we say, hey, I'm going to lose weight. This is my year, new me, right? Diet starts Monday. And then we don't do it, or we do it for 4 days. And then it's Friday. I got to take time. Oh, I drank on Saturday, not going to go to the gym on Sunday, a little hungover. Next Monday comes around, you get 2 days, and then you just kind of fall off. So people don't believe themselves anymore because they've said it over and over again, but they don't have the actions to back it up.
Right.
So no one believes themselves. And when you don't believe yourself, you don't have confidence in yourself. So they're going to quit the program. They're going to be more upset with themselves, and it's going to be harder to restart again. And it's like, I really struggled, to be honest with you, Rob, with taking that personally. Because I want to bring someone along so bad. I'm like, hey, let me show you how it's so good over here. Let me show you how to do it. But then like I said, I can't want it more than someone else. So that's a tough part about my job. Well,
tell me about, so I'm wondering if because I've never actually seen this before, but I'm curious with you, respectfully, because I think, like the most common thing that I come across with trainers is that, you know, it is a business. And I understand that it is a business. So, you know, you are having to develop a clientele, and you need the results to show, hey, I've done these things that have helped these people out, and these are the results that they've gotten from my training, my advices, and so on and so forth. I understand that aspect of it too. But the what I'm trying to get at with you is that, from kind of what you described here to me about the if a client struggles, and for the reasons why they struggle, it varies, but consistent, I would say, across the board. But I'm wondering if you ever had moments where, if you ever had to be more of a therapist than you have to be a trainer, because you can tell there's a lot of mental issue. Oh, I wouldn't say mental issues, but just a mental block, if you will, because the guy can, or the person can do the exercise great. I can see that they're progressing in that field, but here that's where they're struggling. And it's not to say that you're going to say it's not my field to help them out, but you can tell that, okay, there's something that's going on in their life that I may not be aware of here. And because of that, it's preventing them to excel in these other areas, in this case, in training here. So when you have those type of moments where you talk to a client, and I'm not sure if they ever open up to you, but if they do, how do you conduct it? And secondly, do you put a stop and say, fix this shit first, and then come back to me to get back into the swing of things, if you will?
So yeah, you're so messed up. You couldn't possibly get results with the way you are right now. Go home. And so I was a personal trainer before I started doing online coaching.
Right.
And in personal training, I got a lot of therapy sessions, like we'd get like 6 exercises in the full hour. And I'd hear all about their wife or their husband or whoever and what was going on with them. And sometimes I would sometimes I'm having like a really Zen day. I'm good. I'm like, bring me your problems and I will crush them in my mind vice. And then some days I was just not having it. And so I was like, yeah, that's so good. All right, let me 20 more burpees. Yeah, keep talking. Oh, you can't talk? That's perfect. That actually works a lot better for me. So kind of depending on where I was at personally and how much drama I could tolerate or help people through, especially personal training, that was always a determiner for me. But now in online coaching, so I spend a lot less time doing like sets and reps. I got meal plans. I got videos. All like the technical, tactical stuff is already done. Like you talked about earlier, like what happens when I have get the same question? Well, I got a video. So most of the time I'm just like, hey, watch the video on the question that you literally just asked me. So so I have those pieces in place. So a lot of what we do is working through those mindset issues. And I'm not really going to be talking you like down if you're working through a divorce or you yell at your kids too much. Like that's not necessarily my lane.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that, everyone talks about, Jocko Willink, discipline over motivation, right? You've heard that. But I believe it's one step deeper than that. Discipline over motivation, but identity over discipline, because we will never act out of our identity with who we believe we are. So if you've always thought in your life and someone told you, a coach told you, your mom told you growing up, you're just not an athlete, Rob. You're just not athletic. And that is an agreement you have with yourself and a deeply held subconscious belief.
Right.
Then every single time you go to the gym, you think, oh, I'm not athletic. I'm not an athlete. I'm not supposed to be here. So you might be able to white knuckle it, really push yourself and get those workouts in for 4 weeks, for 6 weeks. But if your identity does not shift to, I am an athlete, I'm a healthy person, I'm someone who prioritizes their health, that builds muscle and is strong, you will never stick to this. So a lot of what we do is rebuilding that mindset and that mentality along the lines of how do you shift your identity towards being that healthy person that lives into this, rather than just the person who's like, guess I'll do a 6-week cleanse. Can't wait to go back to eating normal again. Because that person is going to have way worse results, because most of the time they drop weight and then they gain it right back plus 5 pounds. And that's one of the worst things you can do for your health. Might as well just stay the same weight, way healthier.
Have you ever come across somebody, whether it be through the online courses or face-to-face, where you knew right away, this is a lost cause, that I'm going to waste my time. And even if I invest and give them good advices, they will never, ever, fall through with the path. But in thinking that, maybe it changed your perception about how you go about it, or maybe you realize that since it's consistent across the board, that your perception hasn't changed at all. Because that's the one thing that I've come across with a lot of, because my brother used to be a trainer too. He doesn't do it anymore now, but he had told me before on several occasions where he could tell right away, this person's wasting my time, and therefore I'm going to put into it. But if they don't give back to me, I'm not going to really give back to them in terms of like, hey, I see that you're putting extra here. I'm going to show you something else because I can see that you're invested. So therefore I'm investing back in that capacity. So I'm wondering if you have a limitation about how far are you willing to invest with somebody, especially since you're running a business where, not to say that you'll never give them a person a chance, but you know that they're not going to invest. So therefore I'm not going to continue down the path with that said person, if you will.
Totally. And I've gotten better at identifying this as I've gotten deeper into my career. I've been doing this for 13 years. Right. I was a personal trainer for the first 8 of those. I don't really do I don't take any more in-person clients. I still have 4 or 5 that I keep, that I can, it helps me hone my skills and stay relevant in the gym, which is fun for me.
Right.
But so like with that question in regard to personal training, I had a lot of times where people would come in and they would only work out with me once per week or twice per week for 30 minutes. And like, they're not going to get results in 60 minutes per week if that's all the time they're spending. But here's the thing is that you don't really ever know what someone's going through and what they're dealing with. So sometimes that 30 minutes is like the best 30 minutes of their week where they get to come in and have a good time with someone who's like paying close attention to them because no one else in their life pays attention to them. And they get to lift weights and do something outside of their comfort zone that's really fun for them. I had a lady like this train with me for a year. And for the first 6 months, I was like, dude, Deborah, you are like, what are we doing? Like, how do we upgrade? How do we do more? How do we do more? And she never wanted to. But come to find out, like she had 6 kids at home. Her husband was barely around. So she was always serving other people. This was the 30 minutes per week that she got to have someone like attuned to her needs. And so it was a great experience for her, even though she got 0 results in the full year. Nothing happened. On the flip side of that, now with the online stuff, when I'm talking to people, I generally will talk to them on the phone or figure out, like have a little conversation before we get started. And I like to use this, I call it the takeaway close. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So basically when I close someone, I try to talk them out of buying it.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes this backfires on me, but what I like about it is that I need you to defend to me why it's a good time for you to do this. So Rob, we're talking, you're like, man, I want to get in shape. I'm like, awesome. Cool. What could get in the way? And you're like, well, I got 6 jobs, 14 children, and I drive 90 minutes to work each direction. And it's a snowplow. And I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds like you like be a great fit for the program. My concern, Rob, is that you don't have the time and the capacity to devote to something like this. It seems like you have a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
Is now really a good time for you? I'll throw it back to you. I'll let you try to convince me that it's a good time for you. Otherwise, you might be like, damn, you're right. It's probably not a good time for me. I should reconsider that. And then and now we've had an honest conversation where you're not signing up and just because off the excitement. And that's what the fitness industry is just rife with this, supplements and fitness and Instagram influencers. They're all like, oh yeah, do my 90-day Brazilian booty lift or whatever. And you're like, that's some bullshit that you just found off of someone else's Instagram. But so I try to be real honest, real upfront. Like you said, try to be a little cutthroat with people. Like, hey, it doesn't sound like a good time for you. Can you tell me more about that? And sometimes they'll be like, no, it's a good time. I'm going to wake up earlier. I have these things in place. And we go, okay, great. We can get started right away. But sometimes they're like, shit, you're right. It's not a good time. So I try to not take on clients who are not going to succeed because like I said, maybe you succeed for 6 weeks and then you gain the weight back. Now you're a less healthy version of yourself. Now your metabolism is just a little bit slower. Now you have a little less confidence. Like pass. You just stay where you're at. Go watch Netflix and chill. And then when you're ready, I'm here.
One of the biggest things that you talked about, I think in a lot of ways, I think you talk more about dieting than you do with the actual workouts in itself, because I think that's one thing that people, I think most people are cognizant of it as far as you eating healthy will get results. But if you do a workout, you may get results, but may not get the results you want in terms of the body type you're aiming to go for here. But when it comes to the dieting aspect here for you, because you posted on Instagram on several occasions about, in this case, I commented on your post about kale, and then also about wheatgrass as well too, which is something that I remember. I think this is like over 10 years ago, if I remember correctly, where my brother, who was a trainer at the time too, was saying wheatgrass actually helps you out. I tried it. I felt some results. I don't know 100% if that's the case, but it certainly felt that way for me. And then when I got back into it fairly recently, noticed that nothing had changed for me at all in terms of like what the benefits were. I ended up stopped using it altogether. When I started realizing that because once I started getting back into working out, that I noticed that I kept going back to a lot of the same habits I had before in terms of dieting, where I thought and I didn't realize at the time that I was doing it up until recently, where I was finding the shortcuts to lose the weight rather than properly shedding the weight, or in this case, shedding the fat. When you're starting to look into that and you start talking to clients about the dieting, which is actually the most difficult thing to have a conversation with in terms of training, as far as dieting, the workouts, and their commitment to stick with it here. And if the commitment is to stick with one aspect of the training in terms of like working out or the dieting here, I hope the question makes sense. I was thinking talking at the same time, but I think you understand where I'm referring to. Which is harder for them, sticking with the dieting or sticking with the training, or both, or whichever the case may be?
Okay. Yeah. I think I get what you're saying. Is like what comes first essentially, and what's the most important factor. So like I said, I'm just gonna keep saying it. So I've been a trainer since 2008. So I love training. It's my favorite thing to do. I train myself super hard. I love working out with badass dudes who are like also just kind of just getting after it. Like that's my love language. It's like flipping tires in the garage. Like that's what I love to do. So, but what I found like as I was growing up is that no amount of training, Orange Theory, CrossFit, any of that got me the results I wanted until I switched my focus towards being more nutritionally based. There's they say abs are made in the kitchen. You cannot train a bad diet, blah, blah, blah. Most powerful exercise push is the fork push away. Like everyone says stupid shit like that. But realistically, you can't get results with your fitness until you start eating correctly. And I notice this more and more and more because our food quality has been steadily declining over the past decade, 2 decades, since like the 80s. Yeah. We're getting more and more seed oils. We're getting more and more sugar. We're eating trash. We're eating things that are absolutely causing our body to be filled with inflammation. And when you have an inflamed body and an inflamed gut, and you go and you do your hard workout, your body can't recover properly, and you are going to get injured. So not only is it like improper to think that like you can shed fat without focusing on your diet first, you probably can't even gain muscle first because, like just think about the difference. This is really, really basic, but like organic versus non-organic. If you're eating non-organic foods, produce, you're getting some more of the pest like spray. You're getting a lot of the contaminants from the pesticides, and those things have a negative ability to act on your body's hormone, your endocrine system, and can cause all sorts of inflammation, all sorts of different problems within your cellular function. Your mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells. If you've been to chemistry, that's all I remember from chemistry. So if you don't get your nutrition nailed down, it just can't happen for you. And so like all that to say, nutrition is definitely the hardest thing, right? Like I went to AA for a little bit, had a little rough bout in college, I think we've all been there. Yeah. So I went to AA for a little bit. And what was interesting about that is like, while I was like staying sober and not drinking, I just wouldn't be around. I wouldn't go to bars, and I wouldn't have beers in the house. And it was like not that big of a deal. Right. But you take someone now who's got these food addiction properties because food scientists are paid millions of dollars to engineer foods that are hyper palatable, that like you've had McDonald's French fries before?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever had one McDonald's French fry and put it in your mouth?
Only by force.
Yeah. No, they're not designed that way. You need to have 17 of them and cram them into your mouth hole because of the way, like they actually sprinkle sugar on them. You can't taste it, but your brain gets it. It lets your pleasure centers, your dopamine release. So we're battling these scientists who are getting paid way more to keep us fat, sick, and unhealthy, right? And now you're like, hey, you're addicted to food. You're addicted to these high caloric, high fat, high sugar foods. You should stop eating them. And they're like, all right. And so you stop eating them, but you still have to eat breakfast and lunch and dinner, and people are still eating pizza around you, and you're still going out to restaurants. You can't avoid the food. And you have to make that constant decision. Meal 1, meal 2, meal 3. Every single day, you have to be making a decision. And it's hard, right? You want to be sober. You just don't go to bars. Don't have that in your house. You don't need to drink. You need to eat. So it is so, so tough. And it is only going to get tougher. And so I've said before, I think a 6-pack, having like a great physique in 5 years is going to be more rare than seeing someone drive like a Ferrari or a sports car. That is. I remember
you said that, and I honestly I don't think I agree with you 100%. But when you're starting to point out some of those little more finer details about the dieting and the food that's out there, I can see your point about that. But see, the thing is, I think the reason why I didn't fully agree with it was because, then again, I think I live in my own little bubble here where I know what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, and I think I'm more or less projecting well, I do it, everyone else can do it. So I think it's more coming from that, But the thing is that I was curious about is because I do agree with you 100% about the way that foods are pretty much put together here. But the one thing I was also learning more about too, especially listening to you, which is that to me, it sounds like it's like there's an oversaturation of various diets out there, various type of foods out there that if you eat one thing, this will help you shed the fat. I mean, it's been going on for quite some time, but
a lot of money to be made in that kind of dogma, huh?
Right. But it seems like it's a lot more of it now where, especially now with social media being a thing where you have a lot of influencers out there who would say, I've tried this thing here. It helped me out. And if you do it in 5 minutes, it'll work for you just like it worked for me. And if you see their results and so on. Right. So the thing is that, right. So the thing is that I, I'm wondering like if that's actually the hardest part for you now when it comes to having to rise above the grove this rubble, if you will, when it comes to the various advices out there that are ill advised, that are also not very thought out, or maybe were well intended but just weren't very well looked into, and how you have to be able to sift through all that to tell your clients in this case, like, by the way, what you heard about X, Y, and Z does not work at all, and let me show you why. But that takes time to let them know that. So, do you have a way about how you would provide that information to them if you're face to face or whatever the case may be, where you realize that in order for me to get to them, I have to find a way to be able to sell to them and provide like a punchline, if you will, that would be able to get to the point and they understand it. So therefore, when they go out and do their due diligence, they know enough information for them to kind of get the ball rolling for themselves to go down the right path, if you will, when it comes to dieting and therefore also exercising too.
Yeah, I was thinking actually about starting a podcast to talk about this.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding. That's like the basis of Low Carb Hustle podcast. Yeah.
Oh, I was like, well, okay.
So yeah, but like, you're right. There's so much out there and there's so many people just selling, whether well-intentioned or not. Like, I'll give you 2 examples.
Right.
I'll give you like 3. I'll give you like 15 examples. How much time you got? So like, there's a product out there that is an amino acids. It's branched chain amino acids. There's nothing special about it. There's a million branched chain amino acids. But the way this was sold to me, they were like, hey, it's a potato peeler for your abs. You take this, you're going to have abs just carved. It's branched chain amino acids. It doesn't do anything for your abs, but the visual that you get there, the way it's described completely throws people off. It just shuts them down and be like, oh, well, take it. Potato peel for my abs. Right.
Right.
On a flip side, and I think that's a little bit malicious because that is trying to attempt to sell you something. Second example is Orange Theory Fitness. Orange Theory Fitness is a high intensity interval training style workout. It involves high cardio, high reps, low rest breaks. It's a great way to sweat. Unfortunately, sweating a lot is not indicative of a great workout. So you take, 70% of people who hire personal trainers and go to gyms like this are women. And then most of these women have had babies. So they're postnatal. So most women who are postnatal, who are, menopausal, should not be doing high intensity interval training workouts. They shouldn't be doing boot camps. They shouldn't be doing OTF. They probably shouldn't be doing most CrossFit workouts. And the reason for that is their stress levels are already so high that adding in all these high stress things are going to cause more inflammation, more bloating, and decreased results. But they feel good because they sweat a lot, they jump around, but they don't get results. And the trainers there are probably pretty well intentioned. They want to see the people succeed. Most people aren't trainers because they want to make $18,000 a year and get rich, right? That's what I made my first year training. In 2008, when I first started as a personal trainer. So like, it's like, there's like, on one hand, you have people who are malicious trying to sell you supplements. On the other hand, you have people who are well-intentioned and just underinformed. And then third, like, just keep going. Think about veganism. Veganism is healthier, right? It is more environmentally friendly and it's morally superior, right? Obvious.
Yeah.
Aren't all those things like obvious? Isn't that just make common sense?
Yeah, I know where you're heading with this here. Yeah.
Well, the problem with that is that now the burden of proof is on people who are not vegan or don't support that vegan or plant-based diet to prove that it's not those things. It's not on veganism to say, hey, it is those things. So like, now you have to take this super complex, like completely just enormous topic, and you have to break down like the socioeconomic implications of eating a vegan diet, what that does for kids as they age and go through puberty, the effects of amino acids on the brain and the developmental stages of the enzymes of your body. It has to talk about farming practices and monocropping and all these things. And so like now we're like, so I feel like I gave you 3 examples of like one that's malicious, one that is like that's non-malicious and just underinformed, and then one that's just too complicated for people to really understand unless you are willing to do a deep dive into these things. And so now you put me and my podcast up against all these factors. And so like, how do I make a dent in this? And I think like for me, the answer that I've come to, and this is like a slightly depressing when I say it out loud, is that I just have to keep showing up. I have to keep showing up and I have to live out what I talk about. I like one of the reasons that I work out all the time and I eat really healthy and I focus on these things is because I have to be the paragon here. If I talk about this shit all the time and I don't live that out, and if I'm not operating at 100%, and people can look at me and be like, well, Nate doesn't really do that, then I'm not doing my job, because I have a responsibility, having known all these things, to be able to showcase what it looks like when it's taken to its logical conclusion and being lived out on a weekly, daily, monthly, yearly basis.
So again, so kind of got more in depth with that here with you about that, because is that one of the most challenging aspects about having to educate people when it comes to the dieting? Because again, a lot of people tend to look more for short, because like I myself was one of those people too, where if it's quick and easy, that's the way to go, because it gives me more time to do other things as well too. So you have that more or less kind of like the convenience factor behind it as well too, where obviously, as you already know, when you work out and you diet correctly, it does take time. Some people react quicker than others in certain aspects of it. So when you come across somebody who, in this case, is already have, I guess the question I'm asking is, if you've ever come across somebody that's come to you and say, by the way, I want you to train me, but I've already got the diet figured out and I already know what I'm going to do because I found this diet that works for me. I just want you to bulk me up and get me in shape for whatever those reasons may be. But when you listen to them say, the diet that I'm going to follow here is awful, it's not good. It's more likely going to do more harm in the long term than it will, as far as the benefits are concerned. Do you tell them ahead of time that, hey, by the way, I see where you're going. I think you have the right intentions. It's clearly the case, but this is not going to help you out because of X, Y, and Z. So I'm wondering if you have a protocol, if you will, about how you go about and breaking it to them before you start investing your time in training them. Because if they're already telling you what their plans are as far as diet is concerned, you don't agree with it. Do you have like a stipulation that I don't do it or not, or whatever the case may be?
No, I mean, because like everything works, right? The $1 Million Body Method is not a diet as much as it is a framework for eating. So you can take
Okay.
Mediterranean and plug that in. You can take paleo and plug that in. You can take cyclical keto and plug that in. And it all works with the framework of the program. Basically, I'm telling you to eat, here's how you eat proteins and fats for breakfast, proteins and vegetables for lunch, and proteins, carbs, and vegetables for dinner. Plug in whatever you want to. So if you're like, Rob, I'm like, Rob, what are you going to eat for dinner? You're like, ooh, I'm going to have grilled shrimp. Ooh, I'm going to do an onion. And then I'm going to do Captain Crunch. I'll be like, Rob, that's super gross. What's wrong with you?
Right.
But okay, fits the framework, dog, no problem. So like when someone shows up and they're like, I'm doing keto, I'm like, okay, awesome. Like I'm not like going to push keto on most people, but that, if that's what you want to do and it's working for you, let's go. I'm all for it. But that's the thing. It's like, is it working for you? So if someone's like, oh, I want to stay with the diet that's been working, like that I've been doing. And I'll be like, well, has it been working? They're like, no. I'm like, well, maybe you should try something a little different then. Like
Right.
it's the results are obvious if it's working or it's not working. So figuring that out, but I don't have any compunctions about being like, oh, you can't eat that while you're on my plan. Like everyone's got different tastes and stuff like that. So I give them the basics. I give them some of the basic meal plans and stuff like that. But then the goal is for them to create their own style of eating around the $1 Million Body framework. Right. So not everyone's going to eat the same way. Not everyone's kids like the same food. So
what's the most annoying thing about the fitness industry that you find
burpees.
is more, what was that?
Sorry, go on. I said burpees, but I did
burpees.
So.
Well, I was asking what more towards like what's one thing that you notice more that's a big problem in the industry that's still a popular theory or something that wasn't popular before. It started to become more and more popular now that you realize that this has no good effect as far as fitness is concerned. That I think people should be educated, but they're not. So anything that comes to mind that sticks out for you as being that annoying factor for you?
Have you heard about eating 6 meals per day and that's stoking your metabolic furnace?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Good question. What's a metabolic furnace?
I don't remember.
Yeah, no one knows that because that's not a real thing. Okay. So like that's probably one of that's a hill I'll die on pretty much every single day.
Okay.
Is the 6 meals per day. And the reason I don't like that is because that I like the $1 Million Body Method is not necessarily a diet so much as it is a way of building your body's natural energy. Staying focused, staying high energy, staying on top. You see my shirt, it says focus on it, right? Like that's the goal, is to be all day long, be on your game, be in the zone, and be able to manufacture that by eating in the proper way. So when you eat 6 meals per day and you're always pulling blood from your brain, from your extremities into your gut for digestion purposes, you're never operating at 100%. Did you partake in the ritual known as Thanksgiving this year?
Of course.
And then afterwards, and you're sitting on the couch, and you're watching the Detroit Lions get crushed. And your nephew comes in and is like, Uncle Rob, Want to go play basketball with me? What did you say?
I stayed comfortably on the couch and said next year.
Yeah. That's right. That's the tradition, right? We sit there, we just chill. Because when you eat, you shift into what's called parasympathetic nervous system dominance. A lot of people will call this rest and digest state.
Right.
And so when you're always putting your body into rest and digest by eating a handful of this here, having a little bit of candy there, we got to have a snack, right? We don't want to go hungry for more than 1.5 hours. Otherwise, our metabolism is just going to shit the bed. Like that's the mentality that people take into this, like eating 6 small meals per day. But did you know where this 6 meals per day came from? I'd love to share with you.
No, that I don't know.
So in 1994, Metrix, the supplement company, came out with a protein supplement, and it tasted like chalk, as it does. And they were like, "How do we sell more protein supplements?" They're like, "I got an idea." So they came with this genius idea to be like, "Hey, you need to eat 3 meals per day, and you also need to have 3 shakes per day for metabolism." Metabolism. So that was the goal, was to be able to push more protein shakes on people. And it has evolved over time since then to make people think, I guess I just need to be eating 6 meals per day. It's common knowledge again. So we have to fight against that by, having these conversations like we're having right now. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing inherently metabolically superior about smaller meals versus bigger meals. You can eat 1 meal per day. You can eat 2, whatever works best for you. But I really prefer eating those 2 small meals during the day and then having 1 bigger meal at night, because most of us, that's the time we're breaking bread with our family. We're just chilling out at home. Maybe you have a glass of wine, client dinners, whatever else. And I, for one, don't want to have to limit myself to eating 16 small pieces of kale and then 3 ounces of chicken because I burned through all my calories early on in the day. I'd rather eat light, have a ton of energy and focus. I don't know if you're picking up. I'm a fairly energetic person.
I knew right away what I was getting into here, so it's all good.
Are we keeping count of the words? I'd like to deliver 4 episodes worth of words to your listeners in 1 episode.
Go for it.
Thank you. I'll just keep going. So my goal is always, how do you have focus and intensity and energy all day long? And then how do you keep it just super chill and relaxed? So that way, when you finish dinner, you're actually shifting into parasympathetic nervous system dominance, where you are falling asleep better. You're getting better sleep longer, and you're waking up with more energy. Okay. It's like a positive snowball effect.
Okay. So now here's one thing that I'm really curious with you about here, because, you brought something up that actually was one of the first questions to ask you, but now that you reminded me here, the amount of energy you have here, because the one thing I have picked up on is when it comes to you, even when we're on the chat board as well, there's a constant drive that's behind with what you're doing here. So I'm wondering for you, if a lot of that comes from, it's clearly obvious you're very passionate about this. It's very obvious here, but I'm wondering a lot of if it has to do with the fact that because you're training, because you're eating, you're dieting properly, and you're able to sustain it because of those things. If at any point, despite the fact you're doing the things that are necessary to keep that momentum going for you, if whenever you have those roadblocks where you feel like, I don't feel like doing that at all, I don't feel like having, I feel like I've exerted myself too much, or even though I'm eating properly, even though I'm training properly, I'm at a point right now where I just don't feel like I need to, I want to continue pushing, if you will. I'm not sure if it's the best way to go about it here. So I'm hoping you understand my question, because what I'm trying to aim and focusing on is, like, if you have those moments where I just don't feel that energetic anymore right now because of whatever that led up to me feeling that way. Because if you have those moments where you may have a bit of a downfall, if you will, 1, what do you do to overcome that? And 2, if you find a way that works for you, do you still use that same method to be able to rise above that hurdle, if you will, or if you have to find something new each and every time to be able to overcome that? Because for someone like yourself, I'm not, and I hope it doesn't come up the wrong way, because that's not what I'm implying here, but some people may look at that and say, is this an act? Secondly, if it's an act, how are they able to sustain that? And there's no way a person can be that positive and with that kind of momentum along the way, because clearly because the one thing I've heard before is that for someone who's too happy, there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about that could
trace amounts of methamphetamines.
Exactly right. So I'm wondering if for yourself, if how you deal with that, and the perception that people may get from you seeing that, if it comes off intimidating for them, or if they like it, but they don't trust it, like what, because clearly you have a momentum going for you, but I'm wondering if you reach some resistance along the way, just based upon that push that you have about yourself that may push people the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think I'm like a fitness robot, and like like this is super easy for me.
Right.
But I do think like it probably comes more naturally to me. I've been doing it. I tell people I haven't missed a workout since like December 12th, 2015. I've hit every single like I've been doing this at a high level for a long time.
Right.
So for me, it comes down to like there's two rules. I never eat two bad meals in a row. So like if I do go out and have pizza and ice cream and stuff like that, my next meal is going to be a healthy meal. I'm back on track.
Right.
I think when you start spiraling a little bit more and like, I just felt bad. So I had another thing, like then it's hard. Or I don't miss two workouts in a row. So like, yeah, I haven't missed a workout since 2015, but it doesn't mean I like on a Monday when I was like, oh, my legs, I don't feel like it. I'm tired, long day at work that I went to the gym and just like absolutely like pounded myself into the ground. I just pushed it the next day. It's all right. It's not a big deal. So like, I do think that it kind of comes across that like, sometimes I'm not necessarily relatable, and I can give off that impression for sure. But again, like I'm trying to show people what's possible. And I think that like, for me, it's never like, I never get to the point. Okay, number one, I've never struggled with like mental illness. I've never had a lot of depression. I've had a little bit of anxiety here and there, but not like,
Right.
but I've never been in a position where I'm like, don't want to leave the house. So for me, a lot of it is like, okay, if I can feel this good all the time, why would I stop doing these things that are working for me? Like
Right.
I feel great on a daily basis. I wake up with a lot of energy. I sleep great. I have a lot of enthusiasm. I just feel good. I like my life feels very fun for me. I have a very fun time on a daily basis. And so, and a lot of that is related to these habits, waking up early, doing breath work, eating healthy, having the right foods during the day, hitting my workout, being really consistent. All of that gives me a lot of self-confidence and joy. So if I know that these things bring me joy, why would I stop? Like that's my mentality there.
Do you think though that so here's an example. If you come across somebody that right away that you can tell these guys are very much reserved, they have a lot of self-conscious issues, and they have clearly maybe they're coming from a rough past. And when you see them and you have that personality where you come off like, hey, what's going on? And if you notice right away that they're not reacting to you because they're in a bad mood, when you start to talk to somebody in that capacity, whether it be for training or just purely in a social event here, but you're one-on-one with them and you have that conversation with them, do you still keep that? Are you? Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that
I see you're asking. Yeah.
You understand?
Do I keep that same energy? Try to bring them up and be like, hey,
like to try to pull them out. Hey, let's go on. Let's try to get that smile. Like,
hey, if the movie made a cheese, would you eat it?
Right. So I'm just basically wondering if you have an approach about. So maybe right now, let's not be too energetic. Let's pull it back a little bit and just give them the space so that I can work my way to that.
Yeah, totally. And I'm a big fan of a concept called mirroring, because like I remember one time, so when I was a personal trainer, when I started in 2008. So I used to teach TRX classes. Are you rolling your eyes at me?
No, just
I
just thought it was funny.
I 100% deserve that. You're right. So I was teaching a TRX class, and then like, bro, I'd like to formally issue an apology. I'd like to use this platform to issue an apology for anyone who trained with me during in TRX classes from 2013 to 2014. I played way too much dubstep, and I'm so sorry for that.
They're rolling my eyes because
you should. Like I had that coming. So I just be playing dubstep. I'm not working out. I'm just jumping around, and I'm sipping pre-workout. I'm putting pre-workout, like 250 milligrams of caffeine into a Monster or a Red Bull. I'm like, I can like hear colors. I'm going crazy, Rob. And so there's this particular time I remember I was doing this. I was trying out a new pre-workout. I would put some other energy drink, just like absolutely just smashing my heart and my adrenal glands. And then I had right after that, I had a consult with a new client. His name was Tom, and he was an engineer at Microsoft. So just take that archetype for what you will. And so I was like, what's going on, man? And he goes, hey. And I was like, and I was like, I had to dial, I had to fully pull myself from the 12 that I was at back down to a 2 and be like, is everything going in your And like, I had like, otherwise I thought like I was going to break his brain because I was way too much at the moment. And that was tough. But to your question, yeah, I don't try a one speed fits all.
So so here's what I'm curious about, because you brought before about the fact that you never really had any sort of like depression. You had anxieties here and there, but nothing to the point where you had some sort of mental issues where it prevented you to move forward, if you will. But when you are coming across somebody that is that way, a client, um, is your tactic about how you train them different as opposed to, let's say, just strictly sticking with the dieting and the training aspect of it? Or do you also incorporate like some sort of like I don't know, some sort of psychological advice that you could give them in preparation to help with the training, that way you can get them motivated mentally here to continue on with the workouts, and then therefore also try the other things that comes with it as well too? Because again, earlier I talked about how sometimes the physical trainers can be more or less like a therapist, but there's got to be a time where I'm sure you saw somebody that wants to work out, but here they're not fully invested. But you know that if I try this tactic here, I could probably get them to be motivated here, and therefore be able to move forward with having to want to continue with the training, if you will.
Yeah. And I use a similar technique on people who like, especially people who like actually come to me and say, hey, I struggle with depression.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will learn that about someone a couple months into it, or just be like, that seems like this person's struggling. They go off the rails. They ghost me for a while. Like something's going on. I use the same tactic with people like that as I do with people who hate the gym or have tried everything before, tried it and failed. I use something super similar because like I'm not a therapist. I'm not really qualified to help people, and I don't talk to them often enough to be that kind of that voice in their corner, to be like completely honest. So what I try to do is help them aggregate and understand that the small wins are really what they're going to get the big victories. Too many people come into this and they go, hey, I just need to lose 40 pounds. So I'm here and I need to lose 40 pounds. And that's my only W I'm going to get here, is that 40-pound weight loss. But what I try to help them understand is that every single time you wake up and you drink that 32 ounces of water in the morning, every single time you put on a weight vest and go for a walk, every single time you drink a gallon of water per day, every single time you see that scale tick down just a little bit, you feel a little bit more confident, you check that workout box off. Those are wins that should be celebrated, and you should be proud of yourself for those things. Because if we can help people understand that it's not about the 40 pounds, because you have to maintain that. And then that's a whole nother journey in itself. But it's all these other little wins that we get that help us create momentum, that build our self-confidence, that help us feel really good. And if we can start understanding that weight loss and this health journey is just a series of little wins. And if you can get that and adopt it, like, and you think about like what I just talked about with my day and why I feel so good, it's because I'm winning all day long. I'm winning. I'm setting little tiny baby goals and I'm smashing them. Right. My goal is not make $1 million, like have amazing biceps, get a 6-pack, whatever else. My goal is, did I get one more rep at 10 pounds than I did last week? Yes. Huge win for this guy, you know? And so like, I just have like I have, and I try to help people adopt an attitude that my 4-year-old daughter has. Everything she does, she's like, Dad, look at me. I jumped on 1 foot 3 times. And I'm like, that's amazing. You're incredible.
So smaller victories at the end of the day is what you try to focus on to keep them aligned.
Yeah. And if you can have that mentality, then like it just gets so much easier. So much more fun too. Because if we're not having fun, then why the fuck should we keep going?
I mentioned earlier that when it came to what the intention of what the show was, which is more about focusing on the entertainment tree as far as acting and movies, things of that nature, it never really occurred to me to kind of just stray away from that to talk to the people who I said before that I found interesting, that I thought would be I could have it on the show to have a conversation with, to be able to learn more about their approach and their background and whatnot as far as how they go about things here along the way. But quite frankly, though, I mean, I mentioned before that, with I found your story to be interesting, but the reason for that, quite frankly, a lot of it had to do with your personality, because you have on your, if anyone doesn't follow you on Instagram, I highly recommend that they do, but you have those little game show segments you do where you give a contestant $1, right? Which I thought was the funniest thing, because there's the fact that you give them $1, they're still motivated to win it, but when they win it, it's like there's a certain in joke about that it doesn't matter what the prize is. It just matters that, you have the knowledge. And in some things, it may be mundane to a lot of people. And, I guess in some cases it could be, but the fact that you're able to invest with them to kind of more or less break the ice, that to me, I thought was genius when you had that approach. When I saw the first couple of times, I didn't catch on right away until I started paying more attention, more in depth, where I realized, oh, I see what he's doing now, where it's breaking the ice. Here's a prize. It's only $1, but if you win, you walk away $1 more, or if you lose, you walk away $1 less. So,
and I'm going to say some mean stuff to you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of jokes that's thrown in there as well too. And again, a lot of the questions you ask, sometimes it's not even pertaining to the fitness side of it. It's more just trivial stuff like entertainment, songs.
I ask a lot about '90s boy bands,
right? And
Pokemon.
But the thing is that your personality was really what had me look at you in a different way, because it's one thing to have someone who has a good personality that knows what they're talking about, but it's really those little minor details that I happened to notice that I actually connected with, that I really felt like there's a lot more to that story as far as the approach is concerned, that I noticed that when I had listened to you talk before, especially in the various interviews you had in the past with your show as well too, that there's a knowledge that comes with what you're doing. And if it wasn't for your brashness, that also comes with that as well too. I'm not sure if it'll have the same effect for myself as for me to want to be as invested as far as the advices are concerned, but also with a piece of the I guess you could say there's a piece of life that you're also offering as well too, that I believe that people can take away from. But I think with what you're doing now is quite unique in that respect, because there's I wouldn't say an attitude about it, but there's a certain persona. I hate to say persona because I'm trying to figure out the right words to say, but there's a certain personality you have that I think clicks with people. And if it works, you can see that they're hanging on. If it doesn't work, it takes a while, I think, for some of them to say, okay, I get it now, because I see what you're doing, and I fully understand the process now that I invest the time as you progress along the way. So I hope it makes sense here for what I'm trying to explain here. But if it doesn't, then sorry. So, but I think you understand where I'm coming from here. So, for anything that you would like to say in closing, as far as what people can be looking out here for, because quite frankly, I think by the time this episode will air, it'll probably be tomorrow or next week, but it'll be really quickly as far as the turnaround time is concerned. Let anyone know as far as what they could be looking out for that you could probably announce or that they could be expecting here.
Okay, cool. So here's my soapbox. So basically, if you want to connect, I'd love to connect with you. I love talking to people on Instagram. So hit me up at Low Carb Hustle. Or if you're like, man, this guy sounds like a real weirdo and it's kind of my vibe, like listen to the Low Carb Hustle podcast. If you're like, this guy sounds like he's like a cracked out hummingbird, like maybe you're not going to like my other stuff, probably. So, but if you stuck around this long, maybe we're going to be friends. Who knows? If you want to check out my book where I talk about some of the factors of this nutrition plan, I give you a 28-day plan. I'm not trying to sell you anything. You can go to getnatesbook.com and I'll send you an ebook. It's also on Amazon Audible. You can download it. It's called the $1 Million Body Method. Go to getnatesbook.com for free though. And then, like I guess my soapbox would be, since I have the platform, thank you so much. And this is coming out like early in the year. And I know a lot of people are on there, like the New Year, New Me, like everyone's on that, like on that program. If you need some help with that, let me know. But here's the thing. If you don't quit at this, if you keep going and you do not stop, you cannot lose. Fitness is a lifelong pursuit. And if you don't quit, you can't lose. There's so many times we talked about like that 6-week mark, people falling off, getting busy and stuff like that. But if you don't quit, if you just keep going back to it, even if it's hard, even if it's a 1 minute, even if it's a 30-minute walk instead of a workout, you can't lose. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, doing just a little tiny bit better every single day. And you're going to look up at the end of the year, at the end of 5 years, and you're going to be like, wow, look how far I've come. Look what I've accomplished. So if I can encourage one person right now who's like, this again, this whole thing, working out, eating right, like it's just so monotonous. I just want to say, hey, you got this. You can do it. Just keep going, just taking those baby steps. Don't look up. Just keep walking.
Awesome. So on that note, we're going to close out here, but I want to say thank you so much for giving me your time, because I know you are busy as well too, but, and I would love to have this conversation down the line again, where we can get more in depth here. Hopefully a little bit more long time as well too. But until then, I want to say Happy New Year's to you, and until next time, cheers.
You're so cool, Rob and Dina.